Imagine this paradox. Humanity has mapped the surface of Mars with greater detail than the depths of its own oceans. We have unlocked the code of life, splitting genomes like sentences in a book. We can send spacecraft to the outer edges of our solar system and listen for their faint whispers across billions of kilometers. And yet, when we look at the universe itself, when we tally up everything we can see, the stars, the planets, the galaxies, the sun, adds up to less than 5% of what's actually out there. 5%. That's it. Everything we've ever known, every poem ever written, every war ever fought, every life ever lived, every shining star in the sky together, they make up a cosmic sliver. The rest, more than 95% of the universe, is invisible, unseen, unmeasured directly. And among that vast unknown, a mysterious something called dark matter lurks in the shadows. It's almost absurd, isn't it? That a species capable of designing skyscrapers that touch the clouds, of wiring together a global internet that spans continents, could be so utterly ignorant of what the universe is mostly made of. That is the paradox of our time. Our brilliance and our blindness, interwoven so tightly we often confuse one for the other. Let's begin with the science. What is dark matter? At its most honest definition, it is, we don't know. The phrase itself is a placeholder, a cosmic shrug, a label for our ignorance. It does not emit light. It does not reflect light. It does not absorb light. It passes through the universe as though matter were only a suggestion. And yet we know it's there. We know because of its gravity. Galaxies spin too fast to be held together by visible matter alone. If you add up the stars, the gas, the dust, the math doesn't work. The galaxies should fly apart like a merry-go-round spinning too quickly for the children to hold on. But they don't. Something unseen is keeping them intact. Something invisible is providing the glue. That glue is what we call dark matter, and the evidence doesn't stop there. When clusters of galaxies collide, we can see through gravitational lensing how their mass bends the light of background galaxies, and time and again, the bending is stronger than visible matter alone can explain. Something unseen is adding mass, tugging on light, shaping space. So we know dark matter exists. We just don't know what it is. Think of the irony. Humanity has built particle accelerators capable of recreating the conditions just after the Big Bang. We can detect neutrinos, ghostly particles that zip through your body by the trillions every second. And yet, the thing that makes up the bulk of matter in the universe, the scaffolding of cosmic structure, remains invisible, untouchable, undefined. And that's humbling, because it reminds us that for all our triumphs, we are still beginners in the universe. That the book of nature has many unread chapters, many untranslated languages, many secrets that will not yield easily. Now, pause and consider the history. The phrase dark matter first appeared nearly a century ago when the Swiss astronomer Fritz Zwicky noticed something odd about the Coma cluster of galaxies. The galaxies were moving too quickly to be held together by visible mass. He called it Dunkel Materie dark matter. At the time, his colleagues mostly ignored him. It seemed implausible, perhaps even desperate, but as the decades passed, the evidence grew, like a shadow lengthening across the floor of physics. By the 1,970 astronomer Vera Rubin measured the rotation curves of galaxies, how fast stars orbit at different distances from the center, and confirmed the same mystery. There wasn't enough visible matter to account for what the stars were doing. The universe was heavier than it looked. And so the term stuck, dark matter, a name for the unseen. But here's the philosophical twist. Dark matter is not just a scientific mystery, it is a mirror, because history shows that the most powerful forces are often invisible until we learn to recognize them. Gravity itself was invisible until Newton gave it a name. Germs were invisible until microscopes revealed their presence. Electromagnetism was invisible until we built coils and wires to harness it. So perhaps dark matter is not only a puzzle about the cosmos, perhaps it is a reminder of a deeper truth, that invisibility is not the same as non-existence, that ignorance is not the same as absence, that the universe is under no obligation to make its secrets obvious to us. And this raises a tantalizing question. Is dark matter simply a kind of matter. We have not yet discovered a new particle hiding in the shadows. Or is it something deeper? Could it be an unknown force of nature, a fundamental aspect of reality we have not yet imagined? The truth is, we do not know. And that not knowing is both our frustration and our salvation. For it is in not knowing that science thrives. It is in curiosity that we grow. Because if the universe were obvious, it would not be worth exploring. If dark matter were only a mathematical trick, a placeholder in an equation, perhaps we could dismiss it. But it leaves fingerprints everywhere we look. Take the cosmic web, the vast structure of the universe, on its largest scales. Galaxies are not scattered randomly across the sky. They are arranged in filaments and clusters, like dew strung along the threads of an invisible spider's web. The empty space's cosmic voids stretch for millions of light years, while the dense filaments connect galaxies across the cosmos. Computer simulations show us that this structure could not have formed from visible matter alone. Ordinary matter is too slow, too sluggish, too easily blown apart by radiation in the early universe. Something else, something dark, provided the scaffolding. It was the dark matter that clumped first, creating wells of gravity that drew in gas, which then cooled, condensed, and formed stars. In other words, without dark matter, galaxies may never have formed at all. And without galaxies, no stars. Without stars, no planets. Without planets, no life. Which means without dark matter, we would not be here. Pause and think about that. We owe our existence not only to the sun that warms us, not only to the earth that cradles us, not only to the water and air that sustain us, but also to something we cannot see, cannot touch, cannot yet define. The invisible shaped the visible. The unseen gave rise to the seen. And isn't that a lesson for humanity? We are so often tempted to dismiss what we cannot measure, to ignore what we cannot name, but dark matter reminds us that the invisible can be foundational, that the greatest forces are not always the ones that announce themselves. Now, let's consider the candidates. If dark matter is matter just a new kind we haven't yet discovered, what could it be? One possibility is WIMPs, or weakly interacting massive particles. The name says it all. Particles that are massive, that interact through gravity, but otherwise barely touch ordinary matter. If WIMPs exist, they would flood the universe, passing through your body by the trillions every second without leaving a trace. Entire planets, stars, and galaxies would be transparent to them. Another possibility is axions, tiny, ghost-like particles that were originally proposed to solve another puzzle in particle physics. If they exist, they could be dark matter. Unlike WIMPs, axions would be feather-light, but incredibly numerous. Imagine a universe permeated not by heavy particles, but by an ocean of near-weightless ones, like a background hum of existence itself. And then there are more radical ideas. Could dark matter be made of sterile neutrinos, cousins of the ghostly neutrinos we already know? Could it be primordial black holes, ancient remnants from the birth of the universe itself? Could it even be a sign that our understanding of gravity is incomplete, that we don't need new matter but new physics altogether? Every possibility is a doorway, and every doorway opens into a room we have not yet explored. But here's the humbling truth. Despite decades of searching, we have not yet detected a single dark matter particle directly. Experiments buried deep underground, shielded from cosmic rays, wait for the faintest whisper of interaction. So far, they have found nothing. Particle colliders like the Large Hadron Collider at CERN smash protons together at unimaginable energies, hoping to produce dark matter in the debris. So far, silence. And that silence is instructive, because it tells us that the universe does not yield its secrets easily, that discovery is not always about speed or strength, but about patience, creativity, and humility. We often imagine science as a straight path, a ladder climbing toward truth. But in reality, it is more like wandering in the dark, feeling for walls, stumbling on doorways, retracing our steps. Dark matter is one of those doorways. We know it exists, we can see its effects everywhere, but the key to the lock remains hidden. And yet, this is precisely why it matters. Because it shows us that the universe is larger than our imagination, that reality is stranger than our fiction, that ignorance is not failure, but invitation. So let's ask the deeper question, what if dark matter is not matter at all? What if it is something else entirely, an unknown force of nature? It would not be the first time we've made such a leap. Gravity itself was once a mystery, an invisible hand pulling apples from trees and planets around stars. Electricity was once a parlor trick, sparks leaping from amber rubbed with fur. Magnetism was once a curiosity of lodestones and compasses. Again and again, the invisible became not only known, but essential. Could dark matter be the next chapter in that story? And if it is, what does that mean for us? Because here's the profound truth. The universe has never been obligated to be simple. It has never promised us that its rules would be obvious or that its mysteries would be easy. The universe only promises to be real. It is up to us to notice, to ask, to wonder. Dark matter, then, is not just a scientific puzzle. It is a reminder of who we are. We are a species that refuses to accept ignorance as final. We are creatures who stumble, fall, and get up again, guided by curiosity as ancient as the stars. We are beings who look at the 95% of the universe we cannot see and do not say impossible. We say not yet, and that not yet is the most human phrase of all. Dark matter is not just a curiosity tucked away in cosmic corners. It is the stage on which the entire play of the universe unfolds. To understand this, we must go back to the early universe. Picture the cosmos just after the Big Bang. Hot, dense, a churning plasma of particles and radiation. In that chaos, ordinary matter was too restless, too easily scattered by the bath of light. But dark matter, invisible, aloof, almost indifferent to radiation, began clumping together under its own gravity. Those clumps became the seeds of galaxies. Imagine that. Without dark matter, the universe would be a smooth fog, a diffuse mist of particles with no structure, no stars, no planets, no life. Dark matter gave the cosmos its skeleton, its scaffolding, its architecture. The great cosmic web filaments, stretching for hundreds of millions of light years, was woven first from dark matter. The galaxies we admire through telescopes, the spiral arms we romanticize in poetry, the starlight that inspired mythologies and religions, all of it is embroidery upon an invisible loom. And here is where science turns into philosophy, because it reminds us that what is unseen often determines what is seen, that the invisible frameworks of existence, whether in physics or in society, shape the visible outcomes we too easily take for granted. Consider history. Empires rise and fall not only because of visible armies and rulers, but because of invisible forces, economies, ideas, beliefs, networks of trust. These unseen structures are our dark matter. Remove them and society collapses. Strengthen them and civilization flourishes. The cosmos and humanity are mirrors. Both are held together by what cannot be seen. Now, let's return to the cosmic stage. The evidence for dark matter grows sharper the more carefully we look. In the 1,990 seconds, the bullet cluster became a key piece of the puzzle. Two galaxy clusters collided, smashing through one another in a slow-motion crash that took millions of years. The hot gas ordinary matter slammed together and slowed down. But the dark matter, invisible yet detectable through its gravitational lensing, passed straight through. It was as if the universe itself had drawn a diagram for us, separating the seen from the unseen, proving that dark matter is not just a trick of equations, but a genuine component of reality. And yet, despite all this evidence, the identity of dark matter remains hidden. Some scientists liken this to the time before we understood germs. We could see disease spreading, we could feel its effects, but we could not see the agents themselves. We gave them names, miasma, bad air, until finally microscopes revealed the microbial world. Dark matter is our modern miasma. Unseen, suspected, undeniable. And just as the microscope unlocked biology, perhaps some future instrument will unlock the nature of the dark. But the lesson is not only scientific, it is existential, because it tells us that ignorance is not failure. Ignorance is opportunity. To not know is the first step toward discovery. To admit we do not yet understand is not weakness. It is the seed of progress. And this is where dark matter takes on its greatest symbolic weight. Because it is not just about physics, it is about us. What are the dark matters of our own civilization, the unseen forces shaping our world? Inequality, invisible until crises expose it. Climate change, unseen until its effects spill into the visible. Trust and compassion, invisible until they falter. These are the dark matters of humanity. We may not always measure them, but their gravity is undeniable. So when we search for dark matter in the cosmos, we are also searching for the wisdom to recognize the unseen forces in our own world, to notice before collapse, to measure before catastrophe, to act before it is too late. Because the universe has already shown us what happens when we ignore the unseen. Galaxies scatter, structures dissolve, order collapses into chaos. The lesson is clear. Pay attention to the invisible. Respect the unseen. And perhaps that is why dark matter feels so haunting. Because it forces us to confront a truth we resist. That most of reality is hidden from us. That we live in the shallow waters of perception, blind to the depths beneath. That what we see is never the whole story. And yet, this is not cause for despair. It is cause for wonder. Because it means there is always more to learn, always more to discover, always more reason to stay curious. Dark matter is the greatest treasure hunt in the history of science. But unlike gold, unlike oil, unlike the riches we've clawed from Earth's crust, this treasure cannot be mined with picks or shovels. It cannot be smelted, refined, or hoarded. It must be detected in whispers, in shadows, in the smallest of signals. All across the world, scientists have built traps for the invisible. In South Dakota, in what was once a gold mine, detectors filled with liquid xenon wait in silence, shielded from cosmic rays by a mile of rock. If even one dark matter particle collides with an atom of xenon, the detectors are ready to record the faintest flash of light, the tiniest ripple of energy. In Italy, nestled deep beneath the Gran Sasso Mountains, other detectors wait, surrounded by silence, listening for the ghostly knock of a particle that passes through everything else. Even in space, satellites like the Fermi Gamma Ray Telescope watch for strange signals that could hint at dark matter annihilating itself in bursts of radiation. And at CERN, the world's most powerful particle accelerator smashes protons together at near-light speeds, creating explosions so intense they mimic the first instance after the Big Bang. Among the debris, physicists search for missing energy, the telltale sign that a dark matter particle has slipped away, escaping into the shadows. So far, every experiment has returned empty-handed. No conclusive detection, no captured particle, nothing we can point to and say, here it is, the missing matter of the universe. But here's the philosophical turn. Those empty results are not failures. They are progress. Every null result narrows the possibilities. Every silence eliminates whole families of theories. Science advances not only by discovery, but by elimination. The map of ignorance shrinks, even when the map of knowledge grows slowly. And isn't that also true of life? How often do we stumble, fail, fall short, and yet in that failure, we learn what paths not to take? How often do our errors shape our wisdom more than our triumph? Dark matter reminds us that the absence of answers can itself be an answer, if we are willing to listen. Now, let us entertain the radical possibility. What if dark matter is not a particle at all? Some scientists suggest that perhaps we have misunderstood gravity itself. Perhaps Newton's and Einstein's equations, so reliable in our solar system, break down on galactic scales. Modified Newtonian dynamics, or MUND, proposes that gravity is stronger at low accelerations than we think. Could it be that the universe doesn't need new matter, just new math? Others imagine more exotic possibilities. What if dark matter is tied to hidden dimensions, curled up in ways we cannot perceive? What if it is the shadow of another universe, brushing against ours? What if the cosmos we see is only a sliver of a much larger reality. And dark matter is the echo of worlds unseen. These ideas may sound like science fiction, but remember, black holes too once sounded absurd. The notion of time dilation, of space itself bending, of galaxies colliding these were once laughable. Now they are observed facts. The history of science is a record of today's impossibilities becoming tomorrow's commonplaces. And so, the search for dark matter is not only about physics, it is about imagination. It is about learning to ask questions that seem impossible and then finding ways to test them. It is about daring to believe that the universe is stranger than our most ambitious stories. Now pause for perspective. When Galileo first turned his telescope to the sky in 1609, he saw moons around Jupiter. The idea that not everything orbited Earth was scandalous. It shook the foundations of philosophy and religion. Today, we look through instruments far more powerful and discover that not everything in the universe is even visible, that most of reality is hidden from sight. Galileo's telescope expanded our sense of place. The search for dark matter expands our sense of ignorance. Both are progress. And perhaps this is the most important lesson dark matter teaches us, that knowledge is not the absence of ignorance, but the embrace of it. That progress is not the end of questions, but the deepening of them. That the universe does not reward arrogance, but humility. So yes, dark matter may be an unknown force of nature. But even if it remains unnamed for decades, it has already done something profound. It has reminded us that mystery itself is a force of nature. That not knowing is not a flaw, but the essence of discovery. Imagine for a moment a universe without dark matter. No galaxies, no stars, no planets, no life. Without dark matter, the universe after the Big Bang would have been like steam diffusing endlessly into space, too smooth, too uniform, too formless to ever condense into the structures we see today. There would be no great spirals of starlight, no clusters of galaxies, no cosmic web stretching across billions of light years. Only emptiness, expanding, cooling, fading into silence. Dark matter is not decoration. It is destiny. It is the scaffolding upon which the entire cosmic architecture rests, and it continues to shape our future. You see, the fate of the universe depends on the balance between expansion and gravity. We now know the universe is expanding faster and faster, driven by another mystery we call dark energy. But dark matter still provides the gravitational glue that slows expansion on local scales, allowing galaxies to form, stars to shine, and life to exist. Without it, acceleration would have torn everything apart long before we ever arrived. In that sense, dark matter is the quiet hero of the cosmos. It is the stagehand that never takes a bow, the invisible musician playing the harmony behind the melody of starlight. We do not see it, but without it, the performance collapses. And this gives rise to an even deeper paradox. Dark matter, by definition, does not interact with light. It does not shine. It does not sparkle. It does not reveal itself. And yet, without it, there would be no light at all. Pause on that. The very existence of brightness in the universe depends on something that is forever dark. And isn't that also the human story? Our brightest achievements often arise from invisible foundations. The quiet work of farmers sustains the feasts of kings. The unseen sacrifices of generations build the freedoms we inherit. The invisible bonds of trust hold together the fragile machinery of civilization. The cosmos and humanity rhyme. Both are held together by the unseen. Both rely on what is invisible. Both collapse when those invisible forces falter. Now, let's look forward. One day, billions of years from now, dark matter will determine how galaxies drift, how stars are born, how clusters merge or scatter. Its gravity will continue sculpting the cosmos long after our sun has burned out. In the grand story of time, dark matter is not a supporting role. It is one of the main characters. And yet, we live at a moment when we can ask the question at all. Think of that. For 13.8 billion years, dark matter has existed silently, unnoticed, unmeasured, for nearly all of human history. It was invisible not just to our eyes, but to our imagination. Only in the last century did we notice its shadow. Only in the last few decades have we built the tools to search for it. We are the first generation in cosmic history to even know the question exists. And this should give us pause, because it means that our ignorance is not a failure, it is a privilege. To not know is to live at the frontier of discovery. To ask, what is dark matter, is to stand at the edge of the known universe, looking into the abyss with courage rather than fear. And perhaps this is the ultimate gift of dark matter. Not the promise of an answer, but the invitation to wonder. Because when we chase the invisible, we are also chasing the best of ourselves, our curiosity, our humility, our willingness to seek what cannot yet be seen. And in that pursuit, we find not only the universe, we find who we are. We've walked through the science. We've seen how dark matter sculpts galaxies, how it anchors the cosmic web, how it whispers through collisions and lensing arcs, and yet the deeper truth is this. Dark matter is not just a question of astrophysics. It is a mirror reflecting truths about ourselves, because dark matter is, above all, a story of the invisible. And history shows us that invisible forces have always shaped our lives. Consider the discovery of germs. For most of human history, disease was blamed on curses, spirits, or bad air. We could see the suffering, but not the cause. It was only when microscopes revealed the microbial world that we understood. Unseen organisms were changing the course of history. Wars were lost to fevers. Empires crumbled under plagues. Generations lived and died in ignorance of a force they could not see. Or think of electricity and magnetism. For centuries, they were little more than curiosities, amber-attracting bits of straw, iron filings clinging to lodestones. No one imagined these invisible forces would one day power entire civilizations, lighting cities, driving factories, connecting continents with wires and signals, or consider radio waves. When James Clerk Maxwell predicted them in the 19th century, they were an abstraction of mathematics. Invisible, intangible, unproven. And yet, within decades, those invisible waves carried voices across oceans, turning the planet into a single connected system. Again and again, the lesson is clear. The invisible shapes the visible. The unseen drives the seen. What we ignore because we cannot see may in the end matter most of all. So when scientists say the universe is held together by dark matter, they are not just making a statement about galaxies, they are reminding us of a principle as old as science itself, that reality does not depend on our perception, that truth exists whether or not we notice it, that what we call invisible is often only what we have not yet learned to see. And isn't that also the story of human civilization? Our lives are built on invisible forces: trust, compassion, responsibility, justice. You cannot weigh them on a scale. You cannot chart them with a telescope. But they hold our societies together as surely as dark matter holds galaxies. Remove them, and everything scatters. When trust erodes, economies collapse. When compassion fades, civilizations fracture. When responsibility is ignored, collapse follows. These are our invisible scaffolds, our dark matters. And here is where the metaphor deepens. Dark matter does not glow, but without it, there would be no light. Trust does not sparkle, but without it, there is no society. Compassion does not shine, but without it, there is no humanity. The cosmos and humanity rhyme. Both rely on unseen forces. Both collapse when those forces falter. Both endure only because the invisible sustains the visible. Now let us connect this to a pivotal moment in our history, the space race. In the middle of the 20th century, nations divided by ideology looked upward, not just to conquer each other, but to conquer the frontier of space. Rockets built for destruction carried satellites. Satellites carried cameras. Cameras revealed Earth for the first time as it truly is. A fragile blue sphere suspended in blackness, without borders or divisions. That view, the overview effect, changed us. Astronauts reported feelings of awe, fragility, and unity. They saw Earth not as nations, but as one system, delicate and interconnected. And what they saw was the ultimate invisible truth, that the divisions we draw on maps are illusions, that our survival depends on forces we cannot see, that our future depends on whether we choose to act as one species or many. The space race, like dark matter, was not just about science, it was about perspective. It was about realizing that the universe is vast, indifferent, and governed by laws we cannot break. And yet within that vastness, we have meaning because we can notice, we can reflect, we can act. Dark matter is our new frontier. Not because it promises easy answers, but because it demands deeper questions. Not because it will give us power, but because it gives us perspective. Not because it glows, but because it reminds us that the invisible is as real as the stars we see. So the question is not just, what is dark matter? The deeper question is, what are our dark matters? What are the unseen forces holding our civilization together? What invisible scaffolds do we neglect at our peril? And will we learn to notice them before collapse or only after? Because the universe has already shown us the answer. When invisible forces are ignored, galaxies fly apart. When they are honored, galaxies endure. The lesson is not abstract, it is universal. And so we return to the paradox. Dark matter may be an unknown force of nature, but in our search for it, we discover that the real unknown force of nature may be us. Our capacity for curiosity, for humility, for awareness, for responsibility. The cosmos humbles us, but it also invites us. The more we think about dark matter, the more it becomes a story not of physics alone, but of perspective. It asks us to confront the uncomfortable truth that most of reality is invisible. And when we embrace that truth, we begin to see ourselves differently. Think of history again. When Galileo turned his telescope to Jupiter and saw moons orbiting another world, he shattered the illusion of Earth's centrality. When Copernicus placed the sun at the center of the solar system, he redefined our place in the cosmos. When Darwin showed that life evolves by natural selection, he revealed that we are not separate from nature, but continuous with it. Each discovery was painful, unsettling, resisted, but each expanded our awareness. Dark matter may be the next chapter in that story. It may force us to accept that the universe we know is not the universe in full, that what we see is only the surface of a deeper reality, that our familiar world is suspended in an ocean of forces we cannot yet name. And here is where philosophy intertwines with science, because the same is true of our own lives. We imagine ourselves masters of the visible, in control of our surroundings. But beneath the surface of society flow currents we do not always acknowledge, biases we inherit, systems we do not see, connections we take for granted. Just as galaxies ride the gravity of dark matter, we ride the gravity of invisible structures, culture, history, belief, trust. When we ignore those structures, collapse follows. When we recognize them, we thrive. The space race made this lesson visible in a way no philosophy could. When the first astronauts looked back at Earth, they saw no lines on maps, no divisions of nations. They saw one planet wrapped in a thin atmosphere, floating in darkness. They realized that survival was not a national project, but a planetary one. The overview effect was not about seeing Earth from space. It was about seeing Earth as it is, fragile, finite, interconnected. Dark matter asks us to develop a similar awareness, to realize that unseen forces hold us together, to notice them before they falter, to respect them even when they remain invisible. And here's the humbling thought. The universe does not need us to notice. Galaxies will spin whether or not we solve the mystery. Dark matter will hold them together whether or not we ever detect its particles. The cosmos is indifferent, but our civilization cannot afford that indifference. We depend on our unseen forces, on compassion, on justice, on trust in ways galaxies do not. And unlike galaxies, we have the capacity to choose. This is why the search for dark matter is not just science, it is rehearsal. Rehearsal for noticing what is hidden, rehearsal for respecting what is invisible, rehearsal for the humility required to see the unseen, And perhaps this is the cosmic irony. In searching for the universe's dark matter, we may learn to see our own. Now imagine the future. One day, we may discover what dark matter truly is. Perhaps we will find a new particle, hiding just beyond the reach of our detectors. Perhaps we will rewrite the laws of gravity themselves. Perhaps we will open a door to physics we cannot yet imagine. But long before that day, dark matter has already taught us its most profound lesson. That invisibility does not mean insignificance. That the unseen may be the very foundation of existence. That awareness is survival. And so when we look for dark matter, we are not just asking a scientific question. We are asking a human one. What are the forces holding us together? What unseen structures sustain our lives? What invisible responsibilities will decide our future? Because the fate of galaxies depends on their dark matter, and the fate of humanity depends on ours. The search for dark matter may feel abstract, remote, even irrelevant to daily life. After all, whether galaxies are held together by unseen particles or modified gravity does not change the price of bread, the course of elections, or the rhythm of our daily routines. But science has always been this way. At first, discoveries seem irrelevant. Later, they redefine everything. Electricity was once a parlor trick. Germ theory was once a curiosity. Satellites were once a fantasy. Today, they are the skeleton of civilization. The same will be true of dark matter. One day, when we understand it, it may reshape technology, energy, navigation, perhaps even survival itself. But the lesson is larger than science, because dark matter's invisibility is a metaphor for the forces shaping our world today. Consider climate change. For centuries, the industrial age expanded invisibly. Carbon dioxide rose, unseen, odorless, tasteless. No one noticed. The effects were too slow, too subtle, too hidden in the background noise of weather. And then, suddenly, the unseen became seen. Ice melted, seas rose, storms strengthened. What was once invisible revealed itself as foundational. Or, think of inequality. Generations lived under systems that seemed stable, unquestioned. But beneath the surface, pressures built. When they erupt in revolutions, in protests, in unrest, we realize the invisible mattered all along. Or consider trust. You cannot see it. You cannot weigh it. And yet, it is the glue of civilization. Without trust, money has no value. Contracts have no meaning. Institutions have no power. Trust is our dark matter. Invisible, silent, foundational. And here's where the metaphor grows sharp. Galaxies held together by dark matter survive. Galaxies without it dissolve. Civilizations held together by invisible scaffolds, justice, compassion, trust endure. Civilizations without them collapse. This is not poetry. It is physics written in metaphor. Now let's turn to the space race, because it was in that era that humanity learned the most important lesson of perspective. At the height of the Cold War, nations poured resources into rockets designed to carry weapons. But those same rockets carried satellites. They carried humans. And when those humans looked back at Earth, they saw something no generation before them had seen. The entire planet, whole, fragile, beautiful, finite. The Earthrise photograph, a blue planet rising above the moon's gray horizon, became an icon not of nationalism, but of unity. The overview effect was born. Astronauts spoke of how petty our divisions looked from orbit, how thin our atmosphere appeared, how delicate our world truly is. That image changed us. It birthed the modern environmental movement. It made clear that the invisible scaffolds of our survival, air, water, soil, climate, could no longer be taken for granted. And in that moment, space exploration became philosophy. Rockets became mirrors. The cosmos became context. Dark matter continues that tradition. It reminds us that the universe is not built only of what we see. It is sustained by what we cannot see. And if that is true of the cosmos, it is true of us. So when we ask, is dark matter an unknown force of nature? We are really asking something more profound. What are the unknown forces of our own nature? What are the invisible truths that hold us together? And will we notice them in time? Because the stakes are real. The cosmos will not pause for us. The galaxies will keep spinning. Dark matter will keep binding them. But our civilization is fragile. Our unseen scaffolds are vulnerable. And unlike galaxies, we have choice. We can choose to ignore the invisible until collapse. Or we can choose to respect it, honor it, and act with responsibility. That is the deeper lesson of dark matter. It is not just a scientific mystery. It is a mirror, asking us whether we have the humility to see what we cannot yet see. The most humbling truth about dark matter is not that it exists, but that it has existed all along. For 8 billion years, it shaped galaxies, sculpted the cosmic web, forged the stage on which stars would burn and planets would orbit. All that time, it remained invisible, not because it was hiding, but because we were unready. Our eyes could not see it. Our instruments could not measure it. Our imagination could not conceive it. And isn't that also true of the challenges we face as a civilization? The invisible is always there, shaping us, waiting for us to notice. Climate systems, fragile but stable until they tip. Economies, humming with activity until they break. Public trust, unmeasured but assumed until it collapses. The invisible sustains us until it doesn't, and then we realize it was everything. The universe, in its cold indifference, has already written this story in the stars. Galaxies without dark matter fly apart. Structures without scaffolding collapse. Stability is not permanent. It is conditional. It requires the unseen. And so the question comes back to us, will we notice our own dark matters before it's too late? This is where the space race becomes more than history. It becomes prophecy. For it showed us that humanity is capable of transcendence when pushed, that we can repurpose tools of destruction into tools of exploration, that we can look beyond rivalry to glimpse perspective. Think of it. At the height of nuclear standoffs, we sent humans to the moon. At the height of division, we created a photograph Earthrise that united billions in awe. Our darkest hour gave birth to our most luminous perspective. Dark matter offers the same paradox. It is darkness, unseen, unknowable, yet it is the foundation of all light. It is absence, and yet it creates presence. It is silence, and yet it shapes the music of the galaxies. And that is the mirror for humanity. Our darkest struggles, inequality, conflict, arrogance, indifference need not define us. They can become the unseen foundation upon which responsibility, compassion, and awareness are built. Collapse can give rise to rhythm. Darkness can sustain light, but only if we choose. Because unlike galaxies, we are not bound to gravity alone. We are bound to choice. And choice is the true unknown force of nature. What will we choose? To ignore the invisible until collapse, or to honor it while there is still time? To repeat the arrogance of believing that only what we see matters, or to embrace the humility of knowing that the unseen may decide everything? The answer to these questions will define our future more than any election, any invention, any single moment, because it will decide whether humanity is another scattered galaxy or a civilization that endures. And here is the paradox that humbles me most. The universe does not care what we choose. Galaxies will spin. Dark matter will bind them. Stars will burn and die. The cosmos is indifferent. But meaning is not found in the indifference of the cosmos. Meaning is found in us, in our awareness, in our responsibility, in our choice to honor the unseen scaffolds that hold us together. So when we ask, is dark matter an unknown force of nature? Perhaps the answer is yes, but so are we. Humanity is an unknown force of nature, fragile, curious, dangerous, brilliant, capable of collapse, but also capable of transcendence. And that, in the end, is the truest discovery of all. Science at its best is not an act of arrogance. It is an act of humility. It says, we do not yet know, we cannot yet see, but we are willing to ask, to stumble, to listen. And in doing so, we let the universe teach us. Dark matter is perhaps the greatest lesson in humility science has ever given us, because it reminds us that even now, After centuries of progress, after splitting atoms and sequencing genomes and sending machines to the edges of our solar system, we still do not know what most of the universe is made of. Think about that. Humanity, a species of storytelling primates on a small planet orbiting a modest star, has mapped the large-scale structure of the cosmos, traced the history of galaxies, measured the age of the universe to astonishing precision, and yet, the vast majority of reality remains hidden from us. And yet, instead of despair, this should inspire wonder. Because it means there are still mysteries, there are still horizons, there are still questions worthy of generations yet unborn. This is why I say science is not just knowledge. It is a story. A story of curiosity, of humility, of responsibility. A story not only of what the universe is, but of what it means to be human inside it. Dark matter is one chapter in that story, but it is also a metaphor for the story itself. For we too are made of unseen forces. We too are held together by what we cannot always measure. We too collapse when we forget the invisible. And this is where humanity's future comes into focus. We are a species at a crossroads. We have the power to destroy ourselves with nuclear weapons, to destabilize our climate, to fracture our societies. But we also have the power to reach outward, to explore, to imagine, to endure. The space race was proof of that duality. Out of rivalry, we birthed perspective. Out of fear, we found wonder. Out of division, we glimpsed unity. And dark matter offers us a similar choice. We can treat it as a trivial curiosity, a problem for physicists alone. Or we can recognize it as a symbol, a reminder that survival depends on respecting what we cannot see. That meaning depends on honoring the invisible scaffolds of our existence. That progress depends on humility as much as ambition, because one day, future generations will look back at us. They will not judge us by how much we knew, but by what we did with what we knew. They will not ask whether we solved every cosmic mystery, but whether we respected the mysteries that sustain us. And so the search for dark matter becomes something larger than physics. It becomes a rehearsal for survival, a test of humility, a mirror of responsibility. For if we can learn to honor the invisible in the cosmos, perhaps we can learn to honor the invisible in ourselves: trust, compassion, justice, responsibility. If we can search patiently for particles we cannot see, perhaps we can nurture patiently the values we cannot measure. If we can marvel at the unseen forces binding galaxies, perhaps we can learn to care for the unseen forces binding our species. And in that sense, dark matter is not only a mystery, it is a teacher. It teaches us that the universe is stranger than fiction, that ignorance is not weakness, but invitation, that humility is not surrender, but strength. And if we embrace that lesson, then maybe, just maybe, humanity's legacy will not be collapse, but transcendence. And so we return to the paradox. The universe is filled with light, yet built upon darkness. The stars shine, but only because an unseen skeleton holds them in place. Galaxies spin, but only because a hidden force anchors them. Life exists, but only because the invisible shaped the visible long before we were here to notice. Dark matter is mystery, yes, but it is also metaphor. It reminds us that invisibility does not mean irrelevance, that silence does not mean absence, that what we cannot yet measure may be the very foundation of all that we can. And isn't that our story too? Humanity, fragile and fleeting, held together not only by technology and laws, but by unseen scaffolds: trust, compassion, responsibility, hope. Without them, we scatter. With them, we endure. This is why dark matter matters. Not only because it bends light, or sculpts galaxies, or anchors the cosmic web, but because it holds a mirror to us, asking, what are the invisible forces that bind your world? And will you honor them before they falter? The space race taught us this lesson once before. When astronauts looked back at Earth, they did not marvel at borders or empires. They marveled at fragility. They saw a thin blue atmosphere, a single interconnected world, a planet adrift in darkness. They realized that survival was not a matter of conquest, but of awareness. Dark matter extends that lesson to the cosmos itself. It says reality is not what you see, It is deeper, larger, stranger. It says you are sustained by what you ignore. It says humility is the beginning of wisdom. And so the search continues. Underground detectors wait in silence. Satellites scan the skies. Colliders smash protons in fire. And though the universe keeps its secret for now, we listen, we measure, we wonder, because one day we may learn what dark matter truly is. A particle, a force, a new law of nature. Perhaps even a clue that our universe is only one of many. But long before that day, dark matter has already given us its most profound gift. It has reminded us that mystery itself is a force of nature, that the unknown is not a wall, but a horizon, that the unseen is not an absence, but an invitation. And if we accept that invitation, if we cultivate curiosity, as surely as galaxies cultivate stars, then perhaps our greatest discovery will not be dark matter itself, but the realization that humanity too can be an unknown force of nature, not fragile and fleeting, but enduring, not scattered and divided, but bound together by invisible scaffolds we choose to honor. Because the universe is indifferent. The galaxies will keep spinning, the dark matter will keep binding them. The stars will keep burning and dying. But meaning is not written in the stars. Meaning is written in us, in our awareness, in our responsibility, in our choice to keep the unseen forces of our world alive. So when you next look up at the night sky, remember this: the light of stars is only half the story. The other half is darkness, invisible, silent, unseen. And yet, it is the darkness that makes the light possible. That is the secret of the universe. And perhaps it is the secret of us.